Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first Women in Supply Chain Leadership Roundtable, where we're joined by industry experts to talk about each of their career journeys and just what led them to choose careers in supply chain. I'm your host for today, Gabrielle, and I'm so thrilled and honored to be joined by Marguerite Bates-Fryer, who's VP of East Coast Operations at Cargomatic, with Kristen Johnson, Chief Legal Officer of Transportation Affairs at Cargomatic, Alejandra Rosas, General Manager at Atlas Marine, as well as Holly Pierce, Director of Logistics, C&D at Trojan. Ladies, welcome. I'm so very excited to be a part of this inaugural broadcast and today's discussion. But before we get started here, I actually want to remind our audience that at any point during this discussion, if you come up with a question or a comment that you really want our audience to come forward and ask a question of any of our panelists, you can do so because we will actually be following our interviews with a Q&A section post-interview. So while we're interviewing, if you got those questions, be sure to submit them and we'll include that in the Q&A section. That's enough from me. So without further ado, let's get to meet our panelists. Let's go ahead and start by asking each of our panelists to just briefly describe their role, to tell us a little bit about their career journey and just why they've chosen a path or a career path in supply chain specifically. If we can, let's go ahead and start with you, Holly.
Hey, good morning, everyone. And it's awesome
Good
to
morning.
see all these women on the call representing supply chain throughout the industry. I like it. So I am Holly Pierce. I'm the Director of Logistics for C&D Technologies and Trojan Battery Company. Basically, we are an energy storage solution provider. We make batteries. Prior to that, I've spent a lot of time, over 20 years, in international logistics, distribution, supply chain, inventory, procurement. So a lot of different aspects of our field. And I had a rather inauspicious start, I'll be honest with you. And my undergraduate degree is in English and philosophy. So clearly, supply chain was like the next step for me, obviously, right? And I still tell my parents every day, I use my degree every day. Do I write emails? Check. Do I answer phones and have conversations? Check. Do I write technical contracts? Check. So I did use it. But my love for supply chain really comes honest. My dad is in the distribution world, and I've always had a knack for Tetris, trying to make things fit, right? So what do we make fit in the right box? And then when I entered into the logistics world, negotiation, man, that gets me excited. And so basically, to me, it's like, how do I infuse my knowledge, my background, my experience, which is notably different than some of my colleagues, and make it so that I'm an indispensable part of the organization? And so, again, I think that supply chain, given all the attention we've had over the last 2.5, 3 years, it's definitely an awesome and hot commodity to talk about and to get yourself educated on. And so I'm excited just to share my experience with these other very talented, powerful, and well-recognized women. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Aren't we all? Well, let's go ahead and move on to Alejandra. Please tell us, what got you involved in this career? Why are you passionate about the supply chain?
Well, I got a degree in accounting. I was not planning to go into supply chain. I remember my economics class, and they were talking about the ports of LA and Long Beach. And to me, that sounded like very far, far from me, like never connected to that at all. And somehow I started in transportation more than 20 years ago. I came to trucking, started working at Pack Anchor Transportation as a controller accounting, and started learning more and more about the industry. Probably the drivers, the notion about the drivers, like you have a some kind of stereotypes about the drivers, and then you start learning about them, how they're like normal people with families and kids, right? So you start seeing things totally from a different perspective. And I started learning more and more about the industry. Then I went to work for FX Express for a few years, and I came to Atlas Marine in 2014 as general manager, a few months before Cargomatic became our customer.
So very cool. Thank you so much, Alejandra, for sharing. Kristen, could you go ahead and just tell us a little bit about your career thus far up until this point, and just what created your passion for supply chain?
Thank you. Kristen Johnson, Chief Legal Officer in Transportation here. I've been a practicing attorney since 2007 and actually did not start my career off in transportation and logistics or supply chain. But like Holly, I did also study English and philosophy as well as organizational anthropology as an undergrad. And you know what? All that has it does come into play every day in the job that I do, because I, of course, deal not only with the supply chain and with the myriad legal issues you have to solve and the practical issues you have to solve on supply chain, but I also have to deal with all of the legal questions, and a lot of that requires, as much people might complain about, an excessive amount of writing that they see coming from the legal side sometimes. But I practiced at a large international law firm based out of Washington, D.C. for the first 10 years of my life. I actually was based in D.C. and I was also based in Doha. I did a lot of commercial disputes, a lot of complex problem solving. And I always found that the cases that and the clients I was most drawn to were those that had a real impact on the day-to-day lives of people. And so I would have these, some of my cases were like really big, heady, thought-provoking cases, super interesting. But then you work on them and you get so in the weeds, you're like, where's the like real like gritty impact that has? And then you work on cases relating to the supply chain and you think, if I solve this problem, like I'm having an immediate impact on whatever aspect of that problem I'm dealing with in the supply chain at the moment. And so I was overseas for a while. I moved back to Florida. I actually did some work with a supplier. And when I was doing that work, I realized, oh my gosh, there are just incredibly complex legal issues in supply chain and logistics. And as a lawyer, I like to think that I like to figure out what's going on. It took a real while for me to wrap my head around, like, what is happening contractually? What is happening commercially? What is happening from just a common law standpoint in this industry? So I ended up joining a small firm that was solely focused on transportation and logistics. And over the course of the past 5 years, I grew that firm and actually ended up with an amazing client that was Cargomatic. And such a good client, in fact, that I've dedicated myself to being in-house with Cargomatic full time. And what really brings me joy in the supply chain is combining my knowledge of the industry and that deep industry knowledge and the legal problem solving that I have to do every day as a lawyer. I like to say in this industry that every day is like a law school exam, because you get a new question and you're like, oh, I haven't heard quite that one yet. I've heard a lot of things like that, but we got to solve this one. And so it's very exciting. It's very fun. And it has a real impact. And so I love what I'm doing here at Cargomatic, working through issues and making things better, not just for Cargomatic, but for its customers and those that it touches in the supply chain every day.
It keeps things so interesting for sure. And I love to see this passion that all of you ladies are bringing to your careers. That's all we can ask for. Marguerite, what brought you to the supply chain?
Well, good morning, everyone. So my name is Marguerite. I'm the, Vice President of Operations at Cargomatic. I am super excited to be here. I love my job and I love everything about trucking. I was actually had no idea that I was going to get into this industry. It was just, it literally just happened. I was a stay-at-home mom, actually, and my husband was working at the Ford plant, and they closed the Ford plant in Norfolk, Virginia. And I said, well, I might need to think about getting a job. And I was actually going door to door, selling like water reverse osmosis systems. And I came across the Port of Virginia, and somebody there was like, you should be in this business. First off, he blew me off 3 times. So I had to keep going back and going. Containers were falling over and he's outside. And I'm like, this place is really neat. I'm going to keep coming back until you see me. And then that was with APM, and they were part of Maersk and BTT, Bridge Terminal Transport. If you've been in the business a while, you might remember BTT, Bridge Terminal Transport. That is ultimately, I wound up getting a dispatcher job at Bridge Terminal Transport. So I started in the business as a dispatcher. I actually asked to go back. I said no. And then I was like, let me go. Can I come in and sit and like really see what's going on here? And I absolutely loved it and did not leave that building for 12 years. But I left as a regional vice president when I started as a dispatcher. And I loved it. I absolutely loved everything about it. It's exciting. Every day is crazy. I loved all the truck drivers. I started off as a long haul dispatcher. I love dispatching. I love putting the pieces together, like Holly said, with the Tetris. And it just, the gratification of helping them. And then also for the company, saving money when you can find street turns and backhauls and customer service for customers. I mean, there's so many people that you're helping, and that sense of being needed, I think, really, really worked for me. But it's, and I had great leaders and great teams and people around me that really helped push me and supported me and even the community at large. But so that's how I got into supply chain and never left.
I love these types of roundtable discussions because getting to hear each of your stories, no one is alike except for your English majors. But other than that, everyone's path to supply chain has been so diverse and different. Yet the one thing all of you have in common is like you're clearly passionate about your job. You love the industry. You love what you do. And that's just what speaks volumes about this career path. Well, let's go ahead and move on to a little open discussion here. I want to open the floor and kind of ask you ladies just what challenges, because I'm sure there's been plenty, just what challenges are you seeing in your space? What are you doing currently to address them? Just anyone.
I'm gonna say, do you have all day, right? Have you guys lots of news in the last 4 years? Because supply chain is difficult. So I'm a shipper, right? So my company manufactures batteries here in the United States. We sell them all throughout North America and then export to over 100 different countries. And so I deal with both the domestic regulations as well as international regulations. And what I can tell you is that the geopolitical unrest has been really interesting to watch how it unfolds and affects the world's supply chains, specifically with raw materials maybe coming out of Asia Pacific or the former Russian region, right? So it's interesting how it's having an impact there. What I'm so happy about is that the organization I'm with, we do a lot of our sourcing domestically. I only bring in about 200 containers a year of imports. And so a lot of my stuff is sourced domestically. So that it helps when, cargo was costing $30,000 to get a box from, Shanghai to the East Coast, because I don't do a lot of that. However, one of the things I'd like to call out as an exporter, and I know that Alejandra, you mentioned the port of LA, Los Angeles, and Long Beach, right? Let's not forget that they were sending back 7 out of 10 containers empty. Yeah. I had freight I wanted to send to China to be consumed in Asia Pacific, and I couldn't get them to take my boxes. So I've been working hard. My company formerly really worked with freight forwarders, kind of not really going direct with the steamship lines. And so in my tenure, I've worked hard to create BCO agreements, which is beneficial cargo owner, and basically set up my own agreements with the steamship lines to guarantee space, rates, and equipment. And so I find that has helped me to kind of put my vertical integration spin on things and be able to control it a little bit better. It's still crazy. And I love when the ladies are like, yeah, every day is different. It is. Like literally every day is different. So
I would say some of the other challenges that we're seeing in the market right now are, it was just finding drivers, and no one could, find capacity because the volume was so high. It was a struggle to find capacity with truck drivers, and then just even congestion at the port. Even if you had the drivers, you might not be able to get the box out of the port. You might not be able to get an appointment. We've seen a little reverse of that. Now there is excess capacity, and everyone is asking for freight, for volume, right? So now the tides have turned and everyone's having to adjust with rate. So trying to rate into business, people don't even, it's very difficult to know where to be, because it just like Holly mentioned for the containers from Shanghai, it went from $20,000 to move a container from Asia to the US to literally in a week, it was $2,000. Mm-hmm. So when you're trying to quote a rate for a load, it goes from 99 miles from Norfolk to Richmond. Okay, that's $450. Well, it was $850 8 months ago. So now you're trying to win business. Where do you go? You've changed your rates to your contractors, so to match, so they stay with you. And now when the rates come down, you've got to change your rates again with your fleet. And it's a very delicate dance of quoting business, rating business, and winning business, right? Long-term good business. Fortunately, Cargomatic's very good at that. So we are all in good hands, but it's absolutely something happening in the market.
Can I just like really quickly piggyback off of that?
Yeah,
Every time there's a shift like that, there's also typically a legal implication, which we saw like incredibly exaggerated in, early 2020 when the pandemic first hit, because like all these lanes, I mean, everything was contractual. Everyone was doing this on a repeated basis. And then all of a sudden everything had to switch. Well, when you write a contract, you try to, imagine what all the caveats are going to be. But I think no one could really imagine what happened to the supply chain over the past few years. And so we have to, on the legal side, be always thinking forward about what's coming up next. It's definitely a little bit of a game of chess, but then we also have to understand like the business realities that sometimes don't align exactly with the specific plan that someone had 5 years ago when they signed a contract. So you have to be on your toes doing that negotiation that Holly was talking about, that is quite exciting and is often, keeps you very alert. But you have to be able to balance the things that you're doing on the legal side with the incredible shifting realities on the ground, and you can't stick firm just on the legal side in ignorance of what's happening on the ground. So they have to work hand in hand, and it's definitely created a lot of work on the legal side when you have the little dance happening on the ground all the time.
Definitely, that has been the greatest challenge, to be able to provide an excellent service to our customers, as well as our drivers, our carriers, at a fair rate for them and for our business. That's the biggest challenge that I see that we're facing throughout the more than 20 years that I had been in trucking. Different every time this environment is changing. It's like cycles, right? You go through cycles and you have to adapt to it and be ahead of the game, be prepared, because the legal problems are coming. Definitely.
We try to fix them as much as possible.
Space has been a big challenge as well, because it's something that you only have so much of, particularly in LA Long Beach. I'm actually here in the Atlas Marine office with Alejandra, and it's very expensive and it's very difficult to find space for your containers. So we were recently seeing loads stacked everywhere, warehouses, overflowing. People couldn't even take the containers, loads everywhere. And now it's reverse now, and everyone needed a chassis. Now you've got chassis stacked up, you've got empties, that customers are actually coming to us and we're providing them solutions on yard storage, several yards just even here in LA and across the country, where we're housing empties or chassis while they're, planning what their next step is. But it's space has been a challenge for a lot of people.
You know what I just heard? Job security. Y'all, job security. Come to supply chain. We have all the problems.
Yep. I like to call it bellwether, because, no matter what's happening, there's something to address on either side of the shift.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, Holly, actually, you just presented at TPM Tech. How do you feel that technology is kind of changing the transportation and logistic landscape that you're seeing firsthand?
Yeah, it was awesome, first and foremost. I've had the opportunity to represent my organizations over the past 10, 12 years at TPM. And what I want to first call out is that when I would first go there, in 2011, 2012, gotta tell you, it was me, maybe 50 women, maybe 50 people of color. And everyone else knew who we were because we were different. Can I just tell you how awesome it was this year? 3,000 attendees, and the most diverse, from experience to background to, age range. It was fantastic. So that made my heart so happy, first and foremost, because without diversity of experience, my experience is different than Marguerite's, that's different than Kristen's, that's different than Alejandra. And all of that is valuable. So I just wanted to get that out there. To see the demographic change was really exciting. Now, I spoke at TPM Tech, which was very interesting. And the primary topic was ChatGPT. AI talk was everywhere. It was in all the panels. And the panel that I spoke on was actually about order management services. And one of my perspectives is that I think AI, or learned machine learning, is going to be really valuable in the supply chain world. I have team members who currently have to collect, collate, and then analyze data. I would love to have ChatGPT or some type of AI go out and scrub this information everywhere, put it together, maybe do some high level just trends, pop it into a Tableau or Power BI dashboard. But then my team becomes much more analytical, less administrative, more strategic. I can use the human power to really work on the problems, identifying them, moving forward, and then have the machine learning be able to take care of what was once. Think about it. Back in the olden days, bills of lading were done in triplicate. You had to have a carbon copy and you had to mail it. I mean, all of these things. Thank God that we're evolving away from that. We have telex releases, and hopefully blockchain will come eventually. But I think technology is going to be like that sister partner. We want visibility, you need to have technology with it. And so there were a lot of really cool vendors and people with software solutions that were working with existing ERPs like OmniSuite, not OmniSuite, I'm sorry, SAP, Red Wagon, all of the different providers. I'm thinking this is great because the more data we have, the more prescriptive we can be on what our needs are and make sure that we're giving our partners the information they need and working with them to give them the visibility that they require.
No, absolutely. And Marguerite, I actually want to turn it over to you here now because you're more on the operational side of the business. So during the height of just congestion, equipment constraints particularly became a really hot topic. So, and companies were just really aggressively adding to their equipment inventories to better serve the customer. So what are you seeing now in terms of how is the normalization of the market being handled by carriers?
Well, from the equipment perspective, you're right. People were trying to add equipment if they could, but you were trying to buy a new truck, it would deliver in 3 years, literally. I mean, you could not get a truck for at least a year and a half, sometimes 2. We actually are getting 3 new Peterbilts next week that we ordered, I think, a year and a half ago. So I'm super excited about that, as will the drivers be that get to use them. And of course, as I mentioned with the equipment, now you're seeing what's happening today is the chassis are stacked up, right? Where people were just begging to have a chassis, right? People were working deals to use private wheels. But again, right now, from the perspective of what's normalizing today in the market, it's a mixed bag, really. There's some carriers and companies that are having a very, very difficult time. A very difficult time keeping up, keeping their drivers, and securing business in this market. And on the flip side of that, there's companies like Cargomatic that have, our leadership is forward thinking. We're in growth mode. I mean, look at the industry layoffs that are happening. Earlier this year, Flexport laid off 20% of their staff. C.H. Robinson, DSV, all layoffs this year. I mean, because the volume's down, but it's just like the housing market and anything else. I mean, in the right time, there's opportunity, and there is absolutely opportunity right now. And I mean, we are in growth mode, big time. And it's just so exciting to see, right? And there's other players that are in growth mode as well, but that's what's going on. I mean, some people are going to make it and some people are not. But we definitely are. That's a good thing.
And growth mode is definitely a good place to be in. Thank you, Marguerite. Well, Kristen, I actually want to turn this over to you as well, because supply chain conditions are just leading to an increase in government regulations. So what regulations do you think are probably most impacting your kind of world, and just how are they impacting companies, specifically Cargomatic?
Well, how much time do I have to answer this question? I'm just kidding. I was going to make a comment that partially answers your question based on something Holly was talking about, which is technology and the development of new technologies to add efficiencies in the supply chain. Cargomatic is a very tech-forward company. It's really amazing, the technology that it has developed and the efficiencies it's found there. And what I always find is that the law is just drags behind technology. I mean, we saw that with the advent of of rideshare applications and the gig economy and Uber and Lyft and what they've done throughout the United States and also specifically in California. But they had to lead the charge in changing all of the laws, because when those type of transportation network companies emerged, nothing existed to regulate them, really. I mean, it was kind of a ad hoc spattering of regulations that would apply in certain circumstances, but it wasn't like a well thought out, holistic regulatory scheme for that type of business. And everyone's very familiar with that, which is why I use it as an example. It translates directly over into the same sort of issues with emerging technologies in transportation brokerage, in supply chain management. A lot of times the struggle that we see on the legal side is there just isn't the right law to govern, or you have laws from, well, you have several sets of laws and regulations. You have laws that are on the books that are statutes that have been passed, both federal, state, and local laws. Sometimes those are very antiquated. They've been developed over time in the courts. So then you have an extra layer of judicial interpretation. And then also you have a whole spattering of regulations, which I will say the regulations tend to be the thing that keeps up the most, because those change a little bit faster when there's executive authority for an agency to make a change or have a new initiative. But even then, there's usually a time period for notice and comment if they're trying to change a rule or something like that. I mean, just look at the way ELDs were implemented, and the regulations relating to those in the trucking industry. I mean, it took years and years and years, and they're still adjusting it constantly, coming up with exceptions. Like when COVID happened, all the ELD stuff went out the window for a period of time. So what the issue in the law is that the regulations in the laws really often trail the advent of technology and progression in the industry. And so when you're on the business side, a lot of times you'll want to say, well, what's the legal framework for this? Okay, well, I can tell you what the legal framework is, but I can't tell you what the legal answer is, because frankly, the question that we're asking and the thing that we're developing or the thing that we're trying to do, it hasn't been thought of by, legislators sitting back in their desks writing about whatever the issue of the day was 20 years ago. So the law really has a lot of work to do to catch up. It always is. And one of the fun things about being at the forefront, especially in a hypergrowth company like Cargomatic, is that you can see, okay, this is where we want to go. And we can be anticipating, all right, like what legal frameworks are out there now that govern this thing we want to go to, and what's missing. And if you can start to think about what's missing, then you can start to try to fill in that gap yourself. You can choose where you might want to actually seek for law to be passed, which we have, governmental affairs people here that help us with that. And you can seek to try to anticipate where you might run in with more antiquated laws and how you can distinguish the work that you're doing or differentiate it so that the law doesn't get in the way of commercial progress. Because the law is really supposed to be there, for safety, for fairness, for equity, for justice, but it shouldn't be there to stop you from developing a technology or really like doing something different in the marketplace. It's really supposed to be hands off. And so that's what we see a lot on the legal side.
Well, thank you, Kristen. Alejandra, I want to turn it over to you as well, because just what type of shifts are you seeing in customer behavior right now? I'm sure you've seen some type of shift happen, especially now that freight levels are just a little bit more level, more normal. How are you navigating this specifically at Atlas?
Well, the main change that I see in regards to customer behavior is how interested they are now and carefully looking into every single charge, every single detail. They want to minimize cost. While in the past few years, they didn't care how much it will charge them to go and get that container out of the port. They were so worried about getting that container out of the port. They will pay a big amount of money. Now they're looking into every very specific detail, like waiting time. They want to see proof of everything. They even are asking now for GPS information and pre-pulls. They don't want to pay for pre-pulling a container, even though they have an appointment. We were able to schedule the first available appointment at 10 p.m. and they want the delivery for tomorrow at 8 a.m. and they don't want to pay pre-pull charges. So that the way we are trying to navigate all this issues with customers is providing them with as much detailed information that we can provide. Screenshots of the terminals, appointments, availability, like forwarding to them notifications from all the steamship lines or terminals. Like yesterday, we had a situation with an Amazon container. We couldn't pull that container out of the port because TradePac didn't want to continue the operations. They were very congested, and now the workers have a few. They're taking longer to help our drivers. So that's one example. The situation we're leading.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alejandra. Well, for the second half of the panel, I kind of want to switch it over so we can talk more on a personal level of just the kind of challenges that just in this industry women face in particular, challenges in this industry, kind of roadblocks you've faced that you've been able to overcome or are currently facing. I kind of want to open up the floor here to anyone who might have a comment on that.
I'll kick us off. So I was in the industry in, supply chain for about 10 years in my career, and I was a manager, middle level management, and I was hoping to make my way through to the executive level, right, to become an executive director of my organization. And I had a new executive join the team who is my SVP of supply chain. And I really didn't have much chance to interact because I had a layer between us. But I was brought in for a meeting, an introductory meeting, to talk about what the international logistics team was working on, some of our goals. And my boss went in kind of lackadaisical, had his cup of Coca-Cola in one hand and was just ready to shoot the breeze. Well, I walked in, because type A planner, I love my spreadsheets. I walk in with my spreadsheet and I'm like, well, here's current processes. Here's where we are in the project. Here's the estimated savings. Here's like near term endeavors that we're going to potentially put in place, an RFP for this, going from 3 providers to a singular provider here. And then I put out the blue sky initiatives. And I was very nervous, right? Because this is a very serious person, SVP. And he sat back in his chair and he looked at me and I was like, oh no, I shouldn't have opened my mouth. But then he said, we're going to have to take the invisible wrap off of you. And I got to tell you guys, that was the start of my opportunity of having an executive sponsor who was my ally, who supported me, who gave me autonomy, and basically allowed me to do what I was good at, which is management, strategy, negotiations, process improvement. And it was really pivotal in my career. And while I was there, I did get that promotion. I was a director. And it was just something that really was awesome. And I strive now in my hiring processes, but also like in the folks that report up to me, to have that same type of mentorship. And I can honestly say that I've taken the invisible wrap off of some of my employees, and it has been phenomenal. So there you go.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I'd love to talk more just about like career defining opportunities such as those, where maybe you were presented with something that you didn't think maybe you'd be like a right fit for, but just fell into naturally. I mean, sometimes you kind of have to test your limits or what you don't think you're capable of. And only by pushing through that, you realize, oh my goodness, this is something I actually love to do. It's something I enjoy. And because almost like having that mentorship, having someone who can kind of see your career growth, see what you're capable of, and kind of push you towards that to be a better advocate for yourself. Do we have any kind of career defining opportunity moments like that that you kind of just think of? I know everybody thinks of one. Marguerite or Alejandra.
I'm just thinking about when I was a dispatcher that, everybody's always looking for someone that wants to learn, that wants to work. I mean, we can all look around our own office and say, who's working really hard? Who can do more? Who's asking to do more? I mean, how many people come up to you and say, hey, I've got an extra hour in my day. What else can I do? Hey, I'd like to learn that job. I mean, honestly, it doesn't happen too often. So if you're that person that does it, it speaks volumes. And I remember I said, I want to learn how to do that job. And it was the guy that dispatched for Newbern, warehouser. We pick up 55 loads of export paper every single day, 7 days a week. And it's 3 hours away. And we have an implant that works there. And whenever that guy was off, this guy would go there and manage it. And whenever he couldn't go, the boss would have to go, and the boss did not like going. So I said, I want to go. So the boss and I went to there to and he showed me how to do it. And you got to do the yard inventory. I'm checking drivers in. It's very safety conscious. It's very detailed, but I loved it. I mean, it's just more. I'm learning more. I can help cover for somebody, and from there, it just was, what can I learn next? What can I learn next? And hard work pays off. People notice it. If you just work hard, people notice, and quite frankly, they wind up pushing you to do the next. You don't even have to ask or sign up, or you have to apply and those type of things, but a lot of times it can come naturally if you make it known that you are the best candidate for something. If you want to be the next in a role, what can you do to be that job today? You can do part of it. Hey, can I take this off your plate? What can I learn? Can I help? I mean, it's as simple as asking and learning. And the more you learn, the more that you'll absorb, the more that you can, it's just helpful for everybody. And it makes a big difference. So for anyone listening, if you have an extra hour in your day, feel free to ask what you can fill that with that will help you, grow personally, but professionally as well.
Call Marguerite. She will keep you very busy.
Yes, I will. We got a long list of things going on over here.
And one thing you're saying, Marguerite, is so important. Like, you just work hard and it will come naturally to you. I think that what you're showing through through that is that you actually genuinely care about what you're doing. And when you care about what you're doing, you're excited, you're enthusiastic, you start working hard because you care about the people you're working with. You're interested in the things that you're doing. And I really think, for me, that's been how that's just been like the key, I think, in large part to my success, is that I genuinely care. I work hard because I care about the people I'm working about, because I care about the issues, because I care to solve the problems. But that care and that hard work are really bolstered, like Holly says, when you have someone there, like when you're supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just saying like women supporting each other. I will say the people in my life, and I think maybe Holly with you too, taking your invisible wrap off, the people in my life that have really supported me. The fact of where I am right now, I have the support of an amazing mentor and friend in my life, Rich Gerstein, who saw me and wouldn't let up until I joined Cargomatic. And I also had the support of my former partner in my law firm, who said, you know what, you're smart, you're hardworking, you care. You go with what you want, take it and run with it. And giving me, I always say, like, a little bit of wind beneath my wings. I know it's cheesy, but like the ability to do what I want and the freedom to do it and to pursue my drive, like that support I've had from the people who say, I'm going to trust her, I'm going to let her run with it. That has been huge for me, while still providing me their guidance and experience, but not in any kind of belittling or dominating way, but like, I'm just going to help you. We're going to work together as a team. And that has been hugely, hugely important. And I want to give Alejandra a chance to talk, but I want to add one other little thing, which is that support and that teamwork goes beyond just where I work. It goes to my family as well. And I'm so blessed and privileged in my life to have friends and family who support me and let me be who I am. No one complains in my life, which is amazing to me, actually. Even my children, they don't complain when I have to get on a plane and leave for a few days, because they know I'm doing what I need to do and I'm taking care of the family. And also I'm going to be back and I'm committed to them and I'm showing them, I'm being a model for them, and I'm part of their team too. And so I pay it back as much as it's paid to me. And I really think that system, that method of teamwork, I think that's what lifts us up. And I think that's why we see more diversity, like Holly was saying, at TPM, because we're seeing that. I think we're really seeing a massive cultural shift in our society where, hey, guess what? Like, teamwork and supporting each other works really, really well. So Alejandra, I really want to hear from you too.
I was wondering if you were gonna let anything for me. That's exactly what I was. Teamwork, right? What you're saying is exactly the truth. Teamwork, hard work, like Margaret is saying. If you play that role as a team player with your team, treat them with respect.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
to me. I have a phrase in my head that I always try tell my kids, not that much at work, but I try to practice that at work with my team. Gracious professionalism.
Mm.
That
I like it.
goes long way. And my team, I love my team, and I love the way they work together. And being a team player, showing your coworker how to do this, where they can help you, how can you help them.
Mhm.
That, to me, that's the key. You're gonna give the opportunity to a lot of people, and people that can take that opportunity will continue and do more for the company, for you, for the business. It's great. It's just teamwork. I think that's the key word, teamwork.
Mhm.
Well, I love all these keywords and action items. So thank you so much, ladies, for sharing all these. I do want to continue moving on to more industry specific advice because there's still a lot of work to done. We've made just huge strides. It's clear like the supply chain industry continues to make strides towards gender equity. But Gartner's 2022 Women in Supply Chain survey saw a record number of women's at the first line manager, supervisor, senior manager, and director level. So we're seeing a lot of women in leadership roles. So that's fantastic. But as individuals, I want to ask each of you, what we think we can do kind of as a community, but also on an individual level on how we can be encouraging more women to enter the industry, specifically ones that are just more male dominated, right? How can you take that upon yourself and kind of encourage the younger generation, honestly, even the older, just to get more involved?
I will say it will go back to that, right? Teamwork. Start helping your team. You see, girls and boys are like, honestly, I don't look at anyone differently. Like it doesn't matter. You just need to help your team and encourage them to do their work. That I think that's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, and I certainly see that absolutely happening with Alejandra and the team here every day, and it is. It is important to work it not only within the office but also outside the office. So, for example, the Propeller Club is a group that is I know Holly's very familiar with. We're both in the Norfolk, Virginia, in the Virginia area. So Holly and I have actually known each other for quite some time. But it's the Propeller Club is in a they have a college level group, but also adult professional group. So I actually take time and work with the young professionals of the Propeller Club, and they're actually based out of the Old Dominion University. So colleges are a great way to also talk to students. They're always looking for people to either recruit or come talk. I've gone there to some of the maritime supply chain classes and spoken with the students. So just speaking with them, they have a lot of questions because even if it's maritime supply chain, like you wouldn't think that necessarily a coder or a tech engineer isn't thinking about transportation, right? And so that, well, what about this? Or even computer science, right? I mean, we need all those pieces. Accounting, that's Alejandra's background. So just communicating and talking with them about and inviting them to your facility to see what's going on. It really brings it full circle for them to understand what's going on. Hey, look, there's other people here that look like you, act like you. This is a place to be. And the sky's the limit, right? I mean, when you really talk to people about logistics. I mean, I take the opportunity on holidays to just remind family about safety with trucks, but all the containers on the road, it's not just something that's in your way. What is in that container? Everything we have, everything is it's showing up and it's leaving with containers, with logistics. There's always a job. There's always something to do. There's literally something for everybody. In logistics. There really is. And just sharing that with people I think it just brings awareness. And there's lots of places to do that. It can be at your church. It can be at your, at work, encouraging people to, just do more, learn something else. You're in the office. Do you want to be in the warehouse? Right. So I would really recommend people, if at all possible, to look at the local colleges. They're always looking for people to come and talk, and internships are also a great way.
Oh, internships are a fantastic way to get involved. And actually, we just got a comment saying, very inspiring story, Marguerite. So you're inspiring people already. Fantastic. All right. Well, I kind of want to move on to work environment as well, because we're talking about career paths as just in general, how to encourage young women and young men to enter the career and the supply chain career. But we hear a lot about career paths, but also that's kind of up for interpretation, because what does a career path mean? Just what's the best way if I'm interested in the supply chain, I'm a young woman and I'm interested in pursuing this, how do I ensure that I have a set career path and that this is something that I will have a tracked growth, a way that I can look at my career path and say, I will be able to make growth at this point and move on. I mean, I know there's only so much you can plan, but how can I ensure that I have a plan?
Well, if you're not in the industry already, you should apply with Cargomatic or apply with Trojan, C&D, and make sure you get a job in the industry. And then you find what brings you joy on a daily basis. Because I mean, it's just like any other industry. I mean, it's so multifaceted. We need accountants, we need marketing people, everyone that is, helped put this production together. They have massively different skill sets. We need operators, we need people to run our customers and shipping companies. Otherwise, we wouldn't have stuff to ship. So I think find, maybe the piece that you're interested in, and then make sure that you're starting to work in the industry itself. That's the only way to learn.
And I would say enjoy your day, right? Love what you're doing.
Yes.
Love working with your team. So you love what you do every single day. You come to work happy with all the enthusiasm to do everything it takes to make it happen. Do whatever you need to do to accomplish what you need to be accomplishing that day.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Alejandra. Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, how can you ensure that you find that niche that you really like and that you enjoy doing? Because it's all great advice. Go on.
Yeah, you do what Marguerite says. You say, "Hey, can I help you with that?" Or "What is this about?" And you make yourself indispensable. And I think that's a really great way to put it, is that if you're interested, make yourself available. Offer to help. If a shipping clerk is out, offer to help and see what type of paperwork is required, right? If someone is on your track and trace team and you have an interest because customers come to you with that, sit down and learn and train with them, because not only does it make you a more valuable team member, right? Because then you're a utility player. You can get plugged in. You're not just the batter. You're just not just the pitcher. You're not just the baseman. You're utility. You can get plugged in anywhere. But also, kind of helps you figure out what you like. Like, I can tell you one thing, bless your heart, Alejandra, I do not like accounting. And I know that about myself. So when I have to do all my AP invoicing and stuff like that, that is not a fun part of my career. However, I do know there are other things that make me happy. And so knowing what makes you tick, gets you excited, that keeps you engaged, right? There's so many different certification programs out there. Some of them are through professional organizations like CP, SCM or ISCM, or through universities. And I think that's another way to continue your quest, is to continue going through schooling. I'm actually enrolled now with Virginia Commonwealth University to get my MBA as well as my Master's of Supply Chain Management and Analytics. So putting those letters behind my name, I've been doing it for 23 years, but having the letters behind the name will help me get to that next level, which is the C-suite.
That's awesome. I would also really recommend, if you find something that, lights your fire and you really want to pursue it, identify who in that industry is your role model and go meet that person, or find someone that's like, the next step up. If you've identified whatever that is for you, meet and like ask them to be your mentor, like be a friend of them, go hang out with them, find out, hey, give them a call or send them a message on LinkedIn and say, like, are you going to any conferences coming up? Can we go have a drink or coffee or whatever? I mean, like, meet the people that you want to be like, and that because they're going to there's no one way to get up a career path, but they're gonna take you under their wings, and they're gonna help you go along that path, and you can really learn by observing and seeing, what has helped them be successful in that path. Because sometimes, one of the difficulties I see when, at least in the legal field, when people start, as relatively junior lawyers and they progress along their path, Sometimes the things that make you really successful at one level of your career are not exactly the same thing that are going to make you successful at a different level of your career. And so trying to see those who have made it higher up and understand what they've prioritized to help make them successful, so you can start trying to go for some of those skill sets that you might need at that level you're aiming for, I would really recommend to do that.
Yeah.
Shameless plug. There is an organization called Blended. It is a nonprofit organization, and they put together grants for women and people of color to attend conferences who would not normally be able to go, whether it's their where they are in their career, or maybe it's just the money. Like, no, they'll pay to have someone go. So at TPM Tech, there were 3 ladies that were there that I got to meet, and Sarah Barnes, Audrey Ross are 2 of the ladies that are on the board of Blended. Look it up on LinkedIn. But like, if you're wondering if funding is an issue, there are resources out there, and it's specifically to help people who are not always asked to the table. So like, there are ways for you to get to that table.
No, I'm actually so glad you brought that up, Holly, because we're actually getting a lot of questions in from our audience, and I would love to switch over to our Q&A section now so we can get to some of their questions. And you perfectly answered one of those major questions, which was how can women gain access to events like where they can meet like-minded women, find mentorship, and get more involved. So Blended is a good option there. Well, I do want to open up the floor to the Q&A portion we have now, because we do have some questions, if you ladies are ready for those. I actually got one here from Amanda Childers, and she's asking, as a leader, how do you stay mindful of who's at the table and who's missing? Oh, that's a good one. So once identified, do you have any best practices for advocating for inclusion? How do you get the buy-in from other team members or leaders?
That is a really good question. I think like the experience that Holly had, where she was meeting with someone and that person said, I see talent here and I'm going to take your invisible wrap off. Like, I think that's a lot of how you do it. You make sure that you're being inclusive in the way that you're behaving, and also spending time getting to know everyone. Go visit our different offices if you're here, go meet people at every level. Don't be exclusive in the way that you think or communicate just because you might have one role. You can definitely be interacting with people at a different role, because that's just who we are. And we're, at the end of the day, like, we're all humans, and we all are going to relate on different levels, not just where our titles fall. And I think that's hugely important. I've always had a huge cognizance of inclusiveness when it comes to, say, social events or just getting together or including people in meetings. One thing I've always done as an attorney is, when I work with more junior attorneys and I have a meeting, or I have some kind of major litigation event or whatever it is that I'm going to, I always look out to say, who hasn't really done that in a while? And I ask them, like, do you want to come along, or better yet, do you want to have a role in it? And I try to actually give them a role in it. And then I make it clear to them, hey, raise your hand. If you want something, my door is open. I will include you. I will get you involved in that. And I will, to the extent I can, I will teach you and train you. So I think making yourself available helps with that kind of eyes open question that Amanda had.
Absolutely. Thank you. And, this next question is actually asking about, what would people be surprised to learn about working in the logistics industry? I mean, I feel like there's a lot to go off of.
It's fun.
It's really fun.
I mean, I think you ladies are all super fun. So, I mean, I think that's a great surprise, right? That it's a fun industry.
Most people think it's either dirty or messy, or just a dread, like a painful, and it's just and it can be, and I mean, the problems are painful, but the solutions and the people that you have to work with and the creativity that goes into fixing the problems and finding the solutions is absolutely exciting.
Yeah, it just makes it that much more rewarding, right?
I was going to say, Marguerite, how many times have we solved all the world's problems at a cocktail party over a glass of wine? Like, all the problems. I'm talking not just supply chain problems.
Many times.
Many times
over. You know what is one thing that really surprised me when I started learning what is happening in trucking, the stereotypes that we have that people have about drivers, and just learning about them, like we're all human beings, people that have to go to their families at home, and all the struggles they go to go to be able to go into the ports. Sometimes the way they're treated when they go to different warehouses. So that has actually been the inspiration for me to make sure that everyone in my team in this office in Atlas Marine is treating drivers with respect in all levels. Like I enforce that, like I push for that all the time. That was something that really surprised me, and being in this industry and noticing that all of us can make a big difference in the whole supply chain in the world with this. Just want to bring
No,
that up.
that is an excellent,
That's
excellent
perfect.
point.
That's really it. Yeah. No one could
Absolutely.
have said it better than that, Alejandra. I really think that's true.
Poetry. Well, here's another question that I'm also curious about, because we got one asking about how do you stay up to date, because there's so many constant changes happening. Are there any specific publications or kind of newsletters that you keep up with? Could you each name one that you follow?
Well, I follow Transportation Lawyers Association. So if you like the law, you can just do that, or Freight Waves. And Cargomatic actually sends out weekly updates that are incredibly helpful with headline news of the week.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, because it does summarize once a week. I think it's on Fridays, and it says these are the top stories of the week. So it's got 5 publications right there. Boom! If you're reading that, you're really ahead of the game. I personally do zero social media, but a couple years ago, I was actually at a women event called Awesome, Advancing Women in Supply Chain. And it was in Seattle. And I met these ladies, and they said, you have to get LinkedIn. You have to get LinkedIn. I'm like, I don't want to do it. And I don't want to do it. You have to get LinkedIn. And I got it. And it really is important. It really can make a difference when you want to talk about networking, contacts, just even contacts you want to follow up with or ask a question about, or you're going to go to a conference and you see that someone's speaking and you want to read their bio or see what they like. It really adds a lot of value. And it's on there, you can quickly follow and see, Cargomatic has a large presence there. You can see all the stuff at TPM, but that's a very fast, quick, easy way to gain access and follow particular companies or individuals as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Actually, we're getting near to close to the end of our broadcast here. So we have so many other questions that were brought to us from the audience. A lot of great questions. So I just want to let everyone know in the audience that to continue submitting them, because guess what? We'll still answer them post broadcast. Your question will get answered. So no worries if we don't get to it here. We will get to it post broadcast. But that being said, before we start closing up, I do want to each go down the line individually and just close here with just a little piece of actionable advice for those who are listening in. What do you want to leave our audience with? Last thoughts. Let's start with you, Holly.
Ooh, this is a tough one.
And then also in 30 seconds.
Okay.
Bite-sized advice.
I would say imposter syndrome is real. It doesn't need to be real. We have to recognize our abilities, our education, our experience, and that is what sets us apart from our counterparts. That is very important, and we shouldn't doubt ourselves. I'm not saying to run headlong into it when you've not done any work in an environment, but once you've begun to get that accreditation, be proud of it. Be bold, be strong, be vocal.
Mm-hmm. Vocal, strong, and proud. And Alejandra.
I keep going back to my work. Gracious professionalism, please.
It's poetic, perfect advice. So I thank you so much for sharing that with us, and we will all carry that with us. Kristen.
Be willing to look for solutions yourself and make suggestions on how to resolve things and move it forward. Take that personal initiative and responsibility to find a solution, because I think a lot of times people hold back. They're always like, a lot of people wait, you know, for someone to say like, yes, you're right. That's the right answer. Well, we're in business. It's not really about being right or wrong all the time. It's about finding a solution that works in the moment and taking actual action and responsibility for that solution. So I would say really be a forward-moving, solution-focused individual.
Thank you. And Marguerite.
I would just leave it with, since we are on in National Women's Month, that, you know, quite often the challenges can come between women themselves. And it's important that we think about the fact that we are all women. We're wives, we're mothers, we're sisters, we're aunts, we're daughters. We have a lot of roles to play, and it's outside the office and inside the office. So we need to remember when there's something going on, we are a busy group of people, and that's what makes us so good at our jobs. We're efficient, we're attentive, we're safe, and we all have a mother as well, right? Everyone, men and women on here, have a mother, and motherhood is also important, and it's a job. That is a job as well. So let's not discount you know, the job of mothers. And I'll just leave it to quote Snoop Dogg that man, you without us is like Harold Melvin without the Blue Notes. You'll never go platinum.
Naturally. Well, you stole my outro. That was going to be my outro. Now I got to go with a different one.
No, we're going to quote Beyonce, "Who run the world?"
Yeah. We were saying earlier we needed to have that kind of segue us in, but let's all just start singing it on the count of 8. No. Next broadcast. Well, we have to warm up our voices first. But that about wraps up our conversation. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us on our very first inaugural Women's Roundtable, a women's broadcast. It was fantastic. Yeah,
it's really
love y'all
to meet and work with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And that about wraps it up. So thank you for joining us, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed Cargomatic's very first ever Women in Supply Chain Roundtable. As we sign off, please remember the words of the female education activist and the youngest Nobel Prize winner laureate, Malala Yousafzai. Let's make our future now, and let us make our dreams tomorrow's reality. And I think that about sums up our whole conversation today. So thank you so much for everyone who joined in. If you'd like to learn more, please visit Cargomatic's website and check out their podcast. Thanks so much. I've been your host, Gabrielle, and I appreciate you tuning in.